Welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Phil Price, and Phil is an enrolled agent licensed to represent clients before the Internal Revenue Service. He has his own pension consulting firm, which is called the Price Company, and they serve small businesses in Northern California. Phil, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So today, Phil and I are going to be talking about retirement plans for closely held businesses. We're going to try to focus on some of the current developments that have been happening. Today is January 7th, 2014. To sort of give you a little reference, you're going to be seeing this sometime later. And so I guess the other thing is, again, as I have with all of my programs, almost all, just be aware that we're just going to be hitting some highlights here. So we want you to see your tax advisor and probably also somebody that, again, that's more of a specialist in the pension area. That's part of the reason why I have Phil here today, to have somebody that works in this area. But it is a very specialized area, and so. A GP like me, I know enough to be dangerous, but when I'm getting into details, I always get people like Phil involved. So Phil, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. I think as we get started here, why don't we talk about just why is retirement planning important for an owner or owners of a closely held business?
Well, there's a few different reasons. Well, one, it's a way to provide retirement for the owner, but also it's a benefit for employees. It's a way that you can use to hire better employees. It's part of a good benefit package and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's really one of the only things left in the code where you can get a deduction and then get your money back at some point in retirement.
So I think what I want to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about some current issues and trends. And one of the current issues that sort of dovetails into the question that I just asked is this net investment income tax. So I don't know if you've been getting much feedback or interaction with clients about this, but the tax that we're talking about is a 3.8% tax on net investment income.
Right.
The good news in the retirement plan area is that qualified plan income isn't subject to the tax.
No, it's not. I mean, it's something that's actually pretty good for a retirement plan, is that you can put the money in, make money inside the retirement plan. You're not taxed on those dividends or capital gains, and even when you pull it out, it does not. It's not subject to that 3.8%.
Right. So now we're basically, as tax advisors, advising people to shovel as much money into these plans as people can. But there's a couple of reasons. So one is, again, the application of the tax itself when you reach certain income levels to investment income, and the income that comes out of the plan isn't considered to be investment income. Another is, though, we do have these thresholds, and so for a married filing jointly, we're up around $250,000.
Right.
And for single persons, about $200,000 before this tax kicks in, and it's based on the lesser of your investment income or the amount of income that you have taxable. Adjusted gross income. This is different. Adjusted gross income over the threshold. And so by making contributions to these retirement accounts, we get to take it off the top, if you will, get below those thresholds.
Correct.
And so we can avoid investment income tax possibly on other income. So you have to look at your overall tax picture, but this is, I think, an important development in the retirement plan area.
Yes, very, very important.
Yeah. So another thing that you mentioned to me related to the changes that have happened about now same-sex marriage is legal. And I guess there's a lot of adaptation that's happening plan changes and so forth. In
Well,
order
right.
to deal with this.
Yeah, it's really important with the change in the definition of spouse
Yeah.
on the federal level by the Supreme Court. It's something that needs to be looked at for everybody's plan document. The documents that we actually use don't need to be changed because the definition of spouse was never actually done in the document. So all the language would work no matter how the law works. But it depends on the document. If there was a definition of spouse, then that would need to be amended to include same-sex marriage. One of the interesting things is that while we know what we're doing going forward, is that this will be applied retroactively to situations before the Supreme Court ruling, and the IRS has yet to come out with any type of regulation or advice as to how do you deal with situations that may be in the past and may have been handled one way and should have been handled another.
Yeah. So on most employer-provided plans, as I understand it, the spouse almost has to be the beneficiary.
It is in federal law that if there isn't another beneficiary, it is the spouse, unless the spouse waives out of
Yeah,
that
the
right.
spouse has to waive out. So anyway, and previously the same-sex spouse wasn't recognized under the federal tax law, and so now there's this issue. I mean, the benefits may have been paid to the wrong people.
Correct.
Now there may be adjustments or corrections that has to be made as far as who the beneficiary is going to be that's being, for people who have already passed away and so forth.
In our most recent newsletter, I did do a little article telling the plan sponsors, my clients, that to go back and anybody that would be in a same-sex spousal relationship to go back and revisit the beneficiary forms because it may or may not be the primary beneficiary, be that same-sex spouse.
Right. So that's a big deal. It's a little bit of a pain, unfortunately, when you have history that's behind you and now you're in a cleanup mode.
Yeah, it's quite a conundrum about how to deal with that.
So the other thing that's happened, particularly for 2014, is that the healthcare reform has really kicked in. Now people are required to get medical coverage or have penalties apply and so forth. So what do you think about how that might affect the retirement plan?
I think it has a potential to affect it in a few different ways. One, it's a potential higher expense for the employers, so they may not have the profits that they've had in the past to put into a plan. Also on an individual basis, people have to make decisions. They're now required to get health insurance, and depending on how much that costs, whether they get any tax credits against it or not, it will affect how much money they can put into, say, a 401k plan or a simple plan or something that they're self-funding or their own IRA.
So if you got a X salary, let's say 60,000, 70,000, and that's a tight salary if you're in Silicon Valley.
Yes, yes.
And so, anyway, maybe you've been able to sneak a little bit into your 401k in the past, but if suddenly now you've got to come up with money to fund paying for your health insurance, then some of that cash may not be available for you to put into your 401k.
Right. It creates a conflict for people.
That would be sad, but anyway, okay. Let's see here. What do you see sort of happening in general with people? You told me that you were quite busy during the holidays for people trying to get their year-end plans put together and so on.
Yes, they were. So, it was interesting that this year, because a lot of companies have December year-ends, that they were putting in plans a lot more than they have in the past. So maybe there is some optimism and or some people are making more money and feel a little more confident about the economy and where their business is going, that they want to open up plans and things like that. So it's been much more positive this particular year than it has been in about the last 4 years because of the recession.
Okay. So I guess as we talk about this, I'll encourage our viewers, make it easier on people like Phil. You don't have to wait until the end of the year to put your plan into place. Now the plan, if you've got an employer plan, in most cases, you do have to have the plan in place by the end of the year in order to get a tax deduction for that year. You don't necessarily have to pay all the money in,
No.
but you have to have the plan in place.
Correct.
And so, anyway, so that's the reason why people were hurrying. We human beings, unfortunately, wait to the last minute in many cases. But again, we don't have to do that, and we can look ahead and make your New Year's resolution. If you don't already have your plan in place, and you think you might like to have one for 2014, to go ahead and get one set up. Okay, so let's see here. So is there anything else in the way of a current issue or trend that you'd like to add? Or?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about tax reform.
Yes.
And there was a big worry or push over the last year and a half. But I think with the current budget settlement, whatever you want to call it, they came up with, and also that Senator Max Baucus, who was going to be retiring, he's going to retire, but apparently he's going to become ambassador of China, and so he's going to retire substantially earlier than the end of the year, and he was a big pusher in the Senate. So the tea leaves say that, this discussion may not happen until after the 2014 election. So probably everything is going to be a status quo for tax reform, pension reform, or any of those things. So.
Yeah. So we have a lot of provisions, of course, that expired after 2013. We're not going to talk about those today. We've got an awful lot of other things to talk about. The sad part is that I think that there will be pressure on Congress to do something before the end of the year. But we don't know what it's going to be, and just like those people who came in at the last minute, we've seen it before, they just can't seem to get things done until the last minute. And particularly, we've got a lot of conflict in Congress now,
Yes.
people getting along. So anyway, so stand by. I don't expect to see major tax reform. Like you said, Baucus was one of the instigators. He sort of wanted to have it as his legacy.
Yes.
When he left. Now it looks like it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So anyway, we'll see what happens in the future. All right. So let's get into some basics related to retirement plans. What are the basic types of retirement plans? And maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the advantages and disadvantages, limitations, those sorts of things.
Right. Well, there's individual retirement accounts, IRAs. That's somebody that puts in, their own money as a tax deduction, as long as they can deduct it as long as they're under the income limits. There's SEPs, which is a simplified employee plan. It's funded by an employer, but it goes into an IRA. Simple plans, there's simple IRAs or simple 401ks. They're kind of a step up from a SEP, and it's a place where employees could put money in, not as much as a regular 401k. Then there's profit sharing plans, 401k plans, employee stock ownership plans. Those are all what's called defined contribution plans, where it's a percentage of pay or a dollar amount that goes in, whether it's the employer or the employee that puts it in. Then there's also defined benefit pension plans, which are just funded by the employer, and those are the classic pension plan where somebody gets paid a monthly benefit like Social Security at retirement.
That was what I say. That was Dad's retirement plan.
Yeah. We're actually putting in quite a few. The limits and everything are quite good right now, as long as they don't change anything. So there's opportunity for someone who may not have had a retirement plan all these years, but it's getting close to retirement, to set one of those up and put quite a bit of money away for themselves before retirement age.
So that type of a plan, if I have a client that has like a windfall profit, I talk to them about, and you've got an older person again. They're expensive plans when you have a lot of employees.
Yes, they are.
And so they're popular with doctors and so forth. But anyway, like I said, it's sort of Dad's is a traditional retirement plan. It's like based on a percentage of your average compensation.
Yes, where you pay 50%.
And you're funding to pay a benefit.
Correct.
So that's why it's defined benefit. You're funding for paying the benefit, where the others, they have more of a limit that's defined. So it's like you're accumulating and hoping you're going to
hope the investments also pay off.
It's all going to accumulate.
Right.
Okay. a couple of things related to these. One is for the IRA and the SEP. So the IRA, the money has to be in by April 15th.
Correct.
You can set up the plan up to that April
April
15th for the previous year. And of course, the Roth is sort of a derivation. It's a non-deductible IRA. And then now we have a Roth variation also for the 401k, which is,
Correct.
that's a fairly recent development. And then on the SEP, there's another. So the Simplified Employee Pension Plan is kind of a unique one too, because now on these, you can set them up to the extended due date. And so you can set up the plan. You don't have to worry about that December 31 date. You can go all the way out to, let's say, October 15th is an extended due date for an individual income tax return, and set up one of these plans. So that's an advantage, but they're also, they're very cookie cutter. The IRS has, or maybe I should say Congress has structured these plans.
Right.
And so, again, it makes them kind of expensive plans where, in many cases, we're trying to design plans in a way that's going to favor the business owner in most cases.
In some cases,
Yeah. So how do you go about having a plan created?
You have to set up a plan document where you put in the different provisions, eligibility, how do you get in, distributions, how do you get out, retirement age, and those types of things. And you have to sign the plan document to set the plan up, set it in motion.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are companies, well, let's throw out like Fidelity, for example, is a mutual fund family. Also, the major brokerage firms offer retirement plans. So how does that compare with working with a company such as yours?
Well, the main difference is that if you are with one of those particular financial institutions, your money's only going to be allowed to be invested there, as opposed to if you were in a plan that was in one of our documents, you could put it, you can put it in 10 different places if you want, and use the entire spectrum of what can be invested under the law. The other issue is our documents are set up so that you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of different ways to design a document that may work best with your business. Most of the time, most of the documents that are set up at a financial institution are on a standardized document, which have severe limits as to what you can and can't do, mostly because the financial institutions don't necessarily monitor them like we monitor our plans, so they want to have less risk of somebody not necessarily following certain rules and that type of thing. At least that's what I found.
Okay. So anyway, this is the case that what people are trying to do, of course, by getting these standardized plans through the companies, mutual fund companies, brokerage companies, is save money on plan administration in many cases. And I think what we're saying is that may be that it may be less expensive from that standpoint. On the other hand, they may actually be able to get a better contribution.
Get a better contribution and to make sure it's administered properly. I invariably have had a plan in my office over the last, 5, 6, 8 years that was with some financial institution or brokerage house or whatever, and no administration had been done on it. And so we're in the process of bringing everything up to date and that type of thing.
So you have to do some cleanup in some
work
cases.
and that type of stuff.
So I hate to knock anything, but just be aware that again, there are specialized companies like Phil's that they do bring some expertise to the table and personal attention as well.
Yes.
And again, this idea of to have some flexibility. So do you want to be limited? Do you want your employees to be limited to just the Fidelity investments? So it's something to bear in mind. Okay. So maybe you can talk for a few minutes about the non-discrimination and top-heavy rules and how they interrelate with plan administration.
Well, every year when you do administration, there's various tests that have to be run, especially if you have employees. Well, you're always comparing the highly compensated / owners and what benefits they're receiving or contributions compared to the non-highly compensated employees. And you have to fall within the parameters that the law and the IRS has set up in some regulations. You have to cover a certain percentage of the employees, generally at 70%, have to be eligible to be in the plan. If it's a 401k plan, you're comparing how much the highly compensated or owners are percentage of pay they're putting in compared to the non-highly compensated employees, and again fall within the ranges that the IRS sets. Top heavy, if the plan's top heavy, which means 60% or more of the assets are in the owner's accounts, then there's certain, these days, the only real thing to worry about is minimum contributions that have to be made when the owners are receiving contributions. Mm-hmm. So,
and there have been some special things that have been made available to try to reduce the problem of testing, particularly related to 401k plans, where you can put in like a certain percentage for
correct.
Most of your employees that are eligible.
Right, they're called safe harbor.
Yeah.
401k. You either put in a 3% across the board contribution, or you have a match to the 401k contributions. They're safe harbor. They are vested 100%, so the employees have a right to them. But it does allow you not to worry about passing the 401k test.
Mm-hmm. Now, but we talked about these different plans, and almost like they're discrete, and to some degree they are. So, for example, it's hard to have a deductible IRA when you've got you're covered by a retirement plan at work.
Correct.
And a SEP basically is the same thing. That if you have a SEP, you usually can't have, as I understand it, other types of retirement plans.
No, you cannot. You can only have the SEP, or a simple can only can be your only type of plan.
Yeah. So that's pretty much that. But meanwhile, though, for other types of plans, you can do some mixing and matching, right? So you can have like a defined benefit plan together with a profit sharing. Maybe even they used to have what they call money purchase plans.
Yeah, don't really have those anymore because
of the profit sharing. Basically, you can do the same thing with the profit sharing, and so on. So anyway, so again, that's a good reason for working with somebody, because then you can see how you can mix and match to get the amount that you want for a tax deduction, but also looking at how things combine for providing a benefit for people that you're hoping to favor.
Right, because you can combine, say, a defined benefit plan and a 401k plan, so that you're providing an ability for people to put money away in the 401k plan that you can't do in just a defined benefit plan that's only employer funded. And like you said, you can mix and match and try to benefit a variety of employees, from the owners down to the employees, with different things and different flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk a little bit also about some of the compliance things. Now, some of these plans, I guess, actually have to have financial statement type audits. Is that right?
Yes. If you have more than 100 participants in a plan, then there has to be what I call a CPA audit, because a CPA does have to audit the assets and the functioning of the plan, and they sign off. And that attachment goes along with the Form 5500, which is the annual return of a retirement plan that's submitted to the government, most especially the U.S. Department of Labor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what are some of the not the financial, but the reporting that has to be done related to these plans? So you got this 5500?
Yeah, annually you have a Form 5500, which is the annual report of a plan. And that has to be submitted every year. It does list, how many people participate, what are the value of the assets. There's a whole bunch of questions they ask, which we call kick me boxes, because if you answer yes, then there's some problem in it. So hopefully we answer all no on those. Also reporting if there have been distributions out of the plan, the people receiving the distributions have to receive a 1099-R, even if they're rolling it over, to show that, yes, they had a distribution. It's coded on there if it's a rollover, so it's not taxable, or if it is taxable, it's coded properly. And those are reported on a Form 1096. And if there's withholding, which these days has to be done electronically, the Form 945, which is different than a 941 quarterly, reporting withholding on people that do take a distribution and take their money, where it's taxable.
Okay. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end here, Phil, believe it or not. It just goes fast.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, but maybe you'd like to throw out maybe a final thought or two in this area of retirement plans.
Well, I think the most important thing is that people need to save for it. You know, the average baby boomer, the last survey I saw, has saved $50,000 for retirement, and the baby boomers have already, quote unquote, started to retire in 2011. So it's very important that people save for their retirements because it's amazing how much it will cost to live in retirement if you don't have anything. So.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, the income stops, but the bills don't stop.
Yeah, it's funny how that
It's kind of
goes.
strange. So, yeah, so we really do need to do some planning and put some money aside so for when the day comes, you know, we're prepared, at least the best that we can be.
Right.
Folks, I hope that we've given you some things to think about here. We've just, again, hit some highlights, and you really need to get together with a tax advisor to talk about your particular situation. But these retirement plans have become, you know, just a real key tax planning group of things to work with. So with that, we'll see you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.